Hello and welcome to What Now with Anna and Eric. I'm Anna. That's
Hey,
Eric.
I'm Eric. That is right
And
here.
we're a couple of fairly normal people talking about the Bible. We have been in a Read the Bible in a Year plan, obviously, since January. So that's been exciting. And we are significantly far in.
Yeah.
Pretty sure week 17, I think is what this is at right now. It's been many days, been lots of hard work, been all over the map. And we have another exciting week to talk about today. This was a weird one for me. I felt like. But before we get into that, Eric, what's your 3-word summary?
My 3-word summary is going to be friends and family.
Friends
I'm
and
going
family.
friends and family.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So mine would be after God's heart, which we'll get into why that is my 3 words, but that's what I was thinking of. So yeah, simmer that. Let it sit in the brain. And catch-up tip for this week, unless did you have another one you wanted to throw in? Last week you had one.
Just read really fast. That was my catch-up tip for the week. Just read really fast.
That could work, yeah.
Fly through it. So you probably have a better one.
Yeah, mine, which was actually from last week, but yours was really good last week, so we did not need it. Mine is to ask yourself why. Why are you reading the Bible? I mean, why is it important? Why should it matter to you? Why is it important to read the Bible through in a year? What are you going to get out of it? And I think what we have found as we're reading through the Bible is you actually get deeper insight. You get a broader understanding of what's happening, really a broader understanding of God and his character. And one of the cool things that I have found about this is even looking into some of those deeper sections, especially in the Old Testament, where when we come up against people who do not believe in Jesus, this is the part of the Bible people have the most questions about. So to be able to read it and kind of understand it for yourself and to read it with other people, especially, and get their perspectives, it very much prepares you for kind of what can come in the future. Something that Paul said, be always prepared to speak about your faith in Jesus. So it's important, I think. So asking yourself why can be a big motivator for catching up, you know?
It was funny between last night and then today. So I'm taking a break because I couldn't miss hanging out with you. So I'm taking a break from Orange Conference to come on here and talk with you. But all this morning and last night, it was talking about finding your why and knowing your why. And today they said, like, even take 5 days and every day ask yourself, why am I doing this? And really make sure that you're confident in the answer of why. So yeah, when it comes to why are you reading the Bible? Why is scripture so important? Taking time and asking yourself that same simple question of why. So when people ask or when you need to say it, you can say, this is why, and be confident in it. So yeah, I like the know your why on why you're getting into scripture. That's cool.
Yeah.
Good job.
So let's get into this reading the Bible. This is a weird week, and I usually tell you like what all we read, like, oh, we read this book from this chapter. But let me tell you, it is so spread out right now. I actually just want to read what we're reading right off of the Bible plan so you can get how weird this is.
Yeah.
So like for example, first day this week, 2 Samuel chapter 6 verse 12, just the verse. 1 Chronicles 15 1 through 28, 2 Samuel 6 13 to 16, 1 Chronicles 15 29, 2 Samuel 6 17 to 19, 1 Chronicles 16, 2 Samuel 6 19 to 23, in that order with those specific verses. And this is why last week my recommendation was to read the Bible off of your eVersion app or buy the chronological book, because going from this to your paper version or whatever your other version is,
No, it's a mess. I had to keep going back to my phone, like as much as I wanted to stay in my Bible, like I've got it here, like it's here, but
Yeah,
man, it's a mess. It's,
flipping
it's
back and forth between verses. Even at
yeah,
like this week, I don't usually audiobook it because I do like having that where you're, just looking at it and reading it off the page because it helps me take notes. But I was like, this is all over the place. That was just one day.
yeah,
But we did go through, we went through, basically bounced back and forth between Second Samuel and between First Chronicles, because what it was is it was just the same story, basically, the same events that were happening, and some of them had like added details, but really not a lot of added
yeah.
details. So, but it was all over the place, and
And
that was a whole
I
week.
still love the Psalms that are thrown in there. I'm telling you, I'm a huge
Yes.
fan of them throwing the Psalms in there to get that kind of inner monologue or that perspective of things is pretty cool. So
Mhm.
I am a fan of that jumping around. But yeah,
Yeah.
the amount of jumping around is a little crazy.
It
But
was. It was pretty
you know,
interesting. So that was all this week. So we had a couple Psalms, but mainly we were in Second Samuel and we were in First Chronicles. And then because this week was weird too, I actually did my recap different than usual. So because it wasn't, usually when we have a week, we're reading a bunch of different stories, different events with different characters. This was all really just snapshot into the life of David. Beginning to end. It was
I
basically,
just stayed in that for a little
yes,
bit.
it was like the drama of David's life, just
Yeah.
right from front to finish. So we started out, David tries to get the Ark of the Covenant. And we do get some understanding on this one that the reason the first try didn't happen well was because he didn't even ask God how to move God's presence. And then he finally gets the Ark to Jerusalem. One of his wives had contempt for him. That was an interesting sidebar. She didn't like his dancing in his garments. And then we move on. And he steals the wife of one of his most trusted warriors. Gets that guy killed. One of his kids died because of that. He basically has kind of this curse on his life. One of his sons does something really bad. The other son kills him, runs away, comes back, betrays his dad, takes over the kingdom. Then he dies. Then
it's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah,
Friends and family. Friends and family.
this is where the friends and family thing comes in. And then he comes back to Jerusalem, and there's just, there were so many things where half the time I was like, these people. What is happening?
I thought it was even at the very beginning of this reading, and I wrote it down here. I think it was like 2 Samuel 7:3. It was like, he's like, man, I live in this cedar house, and God is in that tent. I'm gonna build God a house. And then God tells Nathan, like, listen, I don't need a house. You know what? I'm gonna build you a house. Like, I love that God like spun it on him.
Flips it around on him, yeah.
Yeah. But I thought that was really funny that it's like God's letting him know, listen, dude, like you can build me a house, but guess what? I've got a house coming for you. It's going to be so much better. But yeah, I thought that was kind of funny.
There are a lot of weird details in this one. Like there's always details where you're like, oh, that's interesting. There were weird ones in this one. Like in First Chronicles 20, verse 2, where it says he gets this crown from this other king and it weighs 75 pounds.
Like that.
Your neck must be so buff.
Yeah, like you gotta work out for something like that.
Like just picturing like a 10-pound weight on your head all the time. Just
but like if you sneeze, you can like snap your neck. Go the wrong direction. Yeah, it could be bad. I don't know. That seems a little scary to me.
There's also this moment where he goes out and he takes out I think it was the Ammonites. There was a lot of battles going on. And in order to decide who survives, he takes like a measuring rope, measures out, like lays them all on the ground in a line, and then measures out up to there, and when the rope ends, those guys lived. But then the next length of the rope, those guys all die. And I was like, oh, can you imagine being the guy laying on the ground and like the rope ends like that far from you?
Oh,
I'm like,
man.
this is almost like psychologically cruel along with the other part. But there was some weird, it was weird. There was all sorts of weirdness.
There was definitely interesting things that I wrote down. Like, there's just moments that I was like, oh, like went from really good to bad quick. Like it was 2 Samuel 13, and David sent Tamar to her brother's house to cook dinner, and it was like, oh, she's making dumplings. I'm like, and then he's like, bring them to bed, and I'm like, ooh, dumplings in bed. That sounds like really nice. And then all of a sudden he sends everybody away, and I'm like, oh no, no dumplings in bed. No dumplings.
Going bad really fast. Yeah.
I was so excited. I'm like, that seems really comfortable, nice plate of dumplings, lounging in bed. No good. It went from good to bad real quick.
I do wonder a lot, okay, so my summary was after God's heart. Yeah. Because what I think about when I read about David is I remember that he was called a man after God's own heart. And God blessed him greatly. And God told him, one of my verses was where God says in 2 Samuel chapter 7, oh, wait, no, that was the wrong one. No, that was the right one. 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 9, he says, now I will make your name as famous as anyone who has ever lived on the earth. His name is still famous, today even. And this guy that God said, I will make your name famous, you are a man after my own heart, kills one of his best warriors, steals his wife, clearly must have had some parent issues because his kids are crazy. And it does not end here. It goes downhill very fast. His family issues are crazy. But again, this was a man after God's own heart. And it just, I think it's a reminder to us as people, God really loved David. Look how bad he screwed up.
Well, that's what I think. It's so many people say, well, I need to know this much Bible, or I need to do these right things, or I need to do this before I can do this. And it's like, no, listen, in this screw up, and what I love is just little notes that I have for the Psalms. It's like crying out to God, all glory to God, saying out to God, remember when God showed up. That's what I love about putting the Psalms in with these readings, is because you can truly see David's heart in his writing of the Psalms. And you can see that it is all about, there's times where he's yelling at God, but he always finishes with, but you're the one. It's all you. And he has those moments of anger, he has those moments of questioning, but it always goes back and it flips to, no, but you're it. You're it. I get it. So it shows that even in all these screw-ups, even in all this bad things that are going on, keeping God central and keeping God in the mix, that's where it needs to be. You need to be striving for God, even though you might make some mistakes. You probably will. Hopefully they're not as bad as some of David's, but, Yeah, so, I don't know. I found we haven't done this in so long, but Psalm 3, because we haven't had a fitness podcast in so long, but I was reading
fitness podcast. Wow, this is a throwback.
In this time of reading, I wrote it down here. It was in Psalm 3, 5, and 6. I believe. It says, I stretch myself out, I sleep, then I'm up again, rested, tall, and steady, fearless before the enemy's mobs coming at me from all sides. Even when he's getting attacked, he's got everybody coming after him, he still gets his sleep. Sleep is so important to be ready. And so if you're not getting your 8 hours of sleep, then, and even when you think the world is against you and everybody's coming at you, get your sleep. Get to bed early, relax, stretch out. David taught us that. Get your sleep. So there you go, little fitness podcast.
Little fitness podcast for you out there reading this. Bet you didn't see that coming. My Jesus verse.
Yes.
2 Samuel chapter 7:23. And really it's just this part that's in the middle. And it says, "What other nation, O God, have you redeemed from slavery to be your own people?" And I felt like, when I read that, what I thought was, that's us today. We have been redeemed from slavery to sin and to death, and we have been made God's own people. Spoiler, New Testament, it says that we have been adopted into God's family, and he has made us his own. And so that's what it reminded me of, and really how cool that God picked the enslaved people, and that's who he freed, and that's who he brought out of bondage, which is really just me and you when you think about it. But that's what made me think of Jesus.
And another weekly thing that I didn't even know was a weekly thing, donkey sighting. In 2 Samuel 17, it was, I think, 23, which, once again, in a mix of something bad about to happen, my brain gets a visual picture, and I can't help but smile. But it says that when he realized that his counsel was not followed, he saddled up his donkey and left. Like, who puts a saddle on a donkey? I'm thinking like a miniature horse, like a small donkey. But he saddled up his donkey. And once again, my brain goes to Shrek and sees, like, why would you saddle up a donkey? How triumphant, or how prideful can you be saddled? But Jesus verse, Jesus rode in on a donkey, so, maybe there's something to be said there. But yeah, weekly donkey sighting. There's a donkey that shows up all the time.
Donkeys came up several times in this chapter. They were like the feature animal, is what I want to say.
They were like the economy car. Like, they were like the car that everybody used. Like, maybe they didn't have like chariots and steeds, but you know what? A lot of people got their hands on a donkey. It's been around here.
Another just verse that was just really good. 2 Samuel 14:14. Which even just that is just nice. 14:14.
Just close.
Just even where it is just nice. It says, "All of us must die eventually. Our lives are like water spilled out on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. But God does not just sweep life away. Instead, he devises ways to bring us back when we have been separated from him." And wow, that is an all-encompassing verse. Even the imagery of, but God does not just sweep life away, because he did it once, sweep life away literally with the flood, and then devised another way so that we would not be separated from him. And that is where the tabernacle came from, and all the Old Testament laws that occurred were ways to reconcile people to God. And then another big sweep happens, spoiler again, when Jesus comes on the scene, where he sweeps away the consequences of death and reunites us with him. So that was just a cool verse.
I'm telling you, like you said, as much of if you get through the jump around, I love the fact that we got this kind of in-depth look at David, because we get to see that struggles, and we get to see wrestling with it. And like, I look at it's, I think 2 Samuel, I'm trying to look through my notes, 21. And what I like is the title of that area is famine and war. So that's always going to be good. You never know. But it's like there's a famine during David's time, and it was because of things that Saul did that all of this is happening. And David listens to God and makes it right. and he finds that moment, and then it said they did everything the king ordered to be done. That cleared things up, and from then on, God responded to Israel's prayer for the land. Like, there was a famine, things were going bad because of something that they didn't even do, but David took the time to say, okay, I'm listening, God. I'm going to clear things up. I'm going to make it right by you. And then God saw him out of it. So it's just really good that over and over, even in messes, even in pandemics, even in things that if we make sure we take the time to really focus on God, God's going to walk us through it, and we're going to come out the other side. And I think it was just a cool verse to see that things were going bad. And where did they turn? They didn't turn to each other. They turned to God, and they tried to make things right with God. So I thought that was really cool.
So I felt like in this whole section, and really even in last week, there were a lot of crazy relationships in this one, like David's relationship with his sons, David's relationship with the wives, any of David's relationships, where there were struggles with them. But what I really thought was the relationship that stuck out to me the most was the relationship between David and Joab, his commander of the army. Joab is like the wingman that nobody actually wants. And it's so weird because they're clearly really close, because there's even points of the story where Joab basically predicts how David's going to react. Like, Absalom dies and David's like, don't even go tell him. He's just going to be upset about it. Like, like, I know how this is going to happen. And like, David even like or Joab tries to get him to do things. But then like, David's like, don't kill my son. And Joab goes and stabs the guy. Like,
yeah. Friends and family. See, it
is the weirdest relationship, and like, there are times even in last week where David tries to make this alliance with Abner, who is Saul's general, and what does Joab do? He goes out and he kills him as a form of revenge. Like, Joab is the worst
Joab's got some issues.
Army commander you could possibly have. And then there are different sections too where David just keeps trying to give away his position and it doesn't even work. Like, at the end of this, Joab's like, hey, or David says, hey, welcome me back to Israel and I'll give you Joab's job. Because literally, I mean, there's clearly this issue that's going on.
Well,
but
then, look, we don't want to get into spoilers, but Jesus had a right-hand man that was a bit of a wild card. But Jesus kind of kept him in check. I mean, he only cut a guy's ear off. So, I mean,
that's true. Peter was pretty wild. I thought you were going with Judas, and I was like, that's a little different.
Yeah,
I don't know if Joab ever got to Judas level, but I could totally see Peter level.
Yeah.
Probably worse.
It's just a wild card. It's how you got to manage.
He really is so much of a wild card. And it's like every 2 seconds. Yeah. Every 2 seconds, David yells at him and his brother Abiathar and is like, stop talking. You sons of whatever their dad's name is.
Just a dysfunctional, a little bit of a dysfunctional family. And I realized my takeaway from a lot of this and what I'm learning from the Old Testament, if the statement is made, multiple wives, nothing good ever. Like, that is
true.
I mean, listen. Just one word, like one, and focus on that relationship. When you get into wives and stuff, it's just, I mean, you're opening a door that I don't think you need to be a part of. I don't think it doesn't go well.
Yeah. And even the generational sin and the generational consequences that just keep happening over and over and over again. Now, that's not to say that if polygamy had been a thing back in the day, that nothing bad would ever happen, but certainly some of this would have been mitigated a little bit, just between all of the favoritism and the sibling rivalry, and just
we have learned where favoritism gets you.
And there is still more to come. Again, spoiler, this will come back and bite David again very shortly.
Not out of the woods yet, but you know what?
We're not out of the woods. And didn't God predict this when he was making the laws back in the day? We read this a long time ago, and he was like, don't let your kings have a bunch of wives.
It's trouble.
What
But
did they
who
do?
listens? No, but you know what? We're going to see David make some mistakes. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to turn back to God.
He
That's
does,
what
yeah.
he does, in fact, turn back, though, in that mistake. So
I think my next step for this one is definitely whatever you have done, you can always come back to God. Just remember David. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like that's a pretty.
But I mean, I think that's where it speaks to God knows your heart. Like that's the thing is I think God, it's a real heart issue. And I think God knows that. And so, yeah, screwing up, addiction, mistakes, whatever the thing you're going through that you think separates you from God, it doesn't. Because God truly knows your heart. And if you can really take time to go back to him and to say, listen, my bad. I own it. I screwed up. Where are we at? God's going to say, we're good. Like, we're in it. Like, okay. And Jesus never said, oh, no, it's cool. Whatever you did is fine. He does say, you know what? Changing would be great. Like, go and do that. Don't do that again.
Yeah.
But we understand that he is still going to accept. He's still going to bring you into it. So take that step into that relationship and see what happens. And it's a good next step.
Yeah.
So good times.
It was good times. This was a weird week.
And it was nice that I read it this week. That was fun. That was fun to actually be in this week where I actually read the material.
Well done.
And, back.
Are you
Saturday
caught up?
week.
I know that you have like 7 different Bible plans, so.
Yeah. Listen. Hey, listen, a little glimpse behind the camera, all right? I might have, because of all the flipping, I might have 2 Bibles sitting right in front of me. So 2 Bibles and the Bible on my phone, just so I could see what days we were reading what. So I might have.
You're more hardcore than me, Eric.
I'm a visual learner. I need the things in front of me.
It was good. It was good.
Anna, I'm glad this was a great break from Orange Conference to sit and chat with you. This was fun.
I appreciate your presence as well.
Yeah.
And we appreciate the people that are listening or watching this. So
we like you.
Yeah. And this is just so good, honestly. I mean, talking about the why of reading through the Bible, it really just is cool to see these different things that you can see when you read the Bible in order, or you read it straight through, that you just don't get when you just go back and forth between different chapters, different areas. I mean, even in this week, if you read the story of Bathsheba, where David steals the wife of this guy in his army, and you look at last week's reading and you realize that guy, Uriah the Hittite, was one of his top 30 soldiers. And that was the guy who he stole the wife of and sent to die. So clearly a pretty close friend is really who he betrayed. But you wouldn't see that detail if you weren't reading it through, because it's just in a different place. So.
And you'll see, and like I said, it's all going to play out. It's all going to be, like I said, you just keep through it, keep going, catch up when you need to catch up, stay the course with it. I love it. But that's what we should, when you post this, if you're listening, I'm going to throw a challenge out. In the comments, put your why. Why do you read scripture? Why is reading the Bible so important to you? And put that in the comments. I'd love to see some of that. So some of our regular listeners that love commenting on that stuff. That would be great.
We look forward to seeing your response.
You
so thank you for listening to What Now with Ann and Eric. I'm Anna Mae Martin.
Ooh, I'm Eric Todd Anderson.
Oh, wow, you threw that in there. That was nice.
I never used my middle name. There you go.
You've never done it before.
No.
That was nice.
Did it. There it is. Ta-da.
And we thank you for listening to What Now with Ann and Eric, fairly normal people talking about the Bible, and we look forward to seeing you next week, probably on video.
Yeah, probably same situation.
Woo, quarantine, living on.
Quarantine life. Love it.
We're out.
See ya.